Deerfoot Lake Forest Lake Watershed District to order. It is approximately 6:35. And I will just reiterate that we're only talking tonight about the strategic planning, and that's our singular topic. So with that, I will turn it over to Emily or Yanni. I should do a roll call vote first. Sorry, let me start. Manager Smalls.
Here.
Okay. Manager Baki.
Here.
Manager Taves. Manager Taves.
Here. Sorry.
Thank you. Manager Lowe.
Here.
Thank you. And Jackie Anderson, I'm here. Okay, full house. So let's keep going. Emily?
Yeah, thank you, President Anderson. So I can give a brief intro, but just hand it over to Yanni because I know we're pressed for time, but we sent out that initiatives table that was discussed last time. I received from Steve, he had some comments that he sent back, but Yanni received as well. And Yanni, maybe I'll let you kind of take it from there as to how you'd like to go through those comments and go through the table.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, let me share my screen and get the table up. I will note just a couple of a little bit of the feedback. It doesn't seem like we got feedback from everybody. So I guess before I share my screen, did everyone have a chance to kind of go through this? It seems like a few hands had some issues kind of just navigating the table and getting it open to be able to kind of work with it. But I guess we'll kind of go around the room here. Who has spent more time between last meeting and this meeting kind of going through some of the things that were sent out?
I went through that sheet that you have set out where we have the ongoing 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5, etc.
Okay.
So I got that to work.
Great. So that's one.
Yes, I was also able to go through the sheet and it looks great to me. I was unable to interact with it, but I was able to read through it.
Okay, perfect. Great. It's two.
Also read through it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I read through it also, and I think that somebody must have pulled out 4 or 5 ideas that were in the letter, and I think that's I kind of supported that approach. Those are the same ideas that I thought needed at least consideration for additional work.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
I was unable to get to it. This is Manager Lowe.
Okay, thank you, Manager Lowe. Appreciate that. Okay. So it sounds like the majority was able to at least get their eyes on it, right, and spend a little bit of time, which is great. I'm going to kind of set some expectations in regards to our goals for today. Let me just make sure everyone can see that. Okay. Okay, can everybody see the table? Okay. Good?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, so goals for today. As noted in the email, okay, we've kind of gone through this on like from a preliminary standpoint. And I think one of the biggest things that I need everyone to really just kind of grasp is a lot of the items that are on this list, right, are pretty well covered in the 10-year plan. And they're covered and they go way deeper and way in the weeds than we should ever be because we hire professionals to be able to support us, to give us the visibility necessary to make sure that we have our thumb on these and we're actually making some linear movement on them. You know, there's a small piece of this document that I think is either mentioned in a high level in the 10-year plan, right, or is missing from it altogether. And that's really where we're going to spend the majority of our time today. I want to go through the list in a pretty quick manner as a group and almost start to, I don't want to say write off, but dismiss and essentially allow us to link our 10-year plan, right, to add more detail and depth to a lot of the initiatives here, which should allow us to centralize on a couple key kind of buckets or initiatives that we do need to kind of unpack and spend some more time on to be able to convey to the staff effectively and start to go through our key performance indicator process and things of that capacity. So I I'm grateful of everyone kind of bearing with us through this. I think it's important to have a clean, concise, visible way to see everything. But as mentioned today, hopefully in the first half, we can really start to whittle this down into a couple of things that were mentioned in the email, but also need some more, just a bit more build out, if that makes sense. Okay. Any questions, any feedback, any notes before we dive in here?
Excuse me, I have one question and maybe just a clarification. I've heard this talked about as a 10-year plan, but it really isn't. I mean, we have a 10-year plan. You know, we've got 6 years left on that current one. So is this a improvement of what we have, or are you attempting to do a new 10-year?
Yeah, this is not supposed to replace our 10-year plan. I know that cadence works very well for the organization, and the level of detail and depth that's in that document is not something that we're looking to replace or change by any means. You know, when I was speaking to it, it was more so leveraging the current 10-year plan to support this more short-term plan. And again, I don't think we've exactly nailed down the time period because a lot of what we've discussed is ongoing. But when we start to dial things into staffing, human resources, expansion, capacity, the new building, things like that, that should really help support the timeline that we're working within with a lot of this. I have a sneaking suspicion that this is kind of a 3 to 5 year glimpse, if that makes sense. Some things are already ongoing and have been started in the 6 years, right, that we are into our current 10-year plan. But this is supposed to focus on things that are a bit more actionable in relation to the organization, not necessarily some of the quote unquote industry specific or specific things that we're doing in regards to water quality improvement, green space, etc.
Okay, good. Well, that's how I did mine a month ago or so, whenever we went through that. And I just want to make sure, because I considered that to be just a formulation of the remaining 5.5 years that we have on the current plan. Okay.
Yeah, that's totally, I think we are on the same page, and I think that's fantastic.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, feedback, points of clarity, anything like that?
Emily, did you get the copy did I send you a copy of what I had done? I'm not finding it in my sent documents, but I got it in front of me here.
On the initiatives table, or just kind of the general, we did get a 1-pager from you regarding like priorities from the plan.
No, this is the actual document we have in front of us, because I went through and did the drop downs and saved it. And I thought I had sent that to you on Monday.
Oh, I didn't receive that.
Okay, I'll keep looking.
Okay.
I have it here, so.
Great. Okay, so as mentioned, a lot of the things we're going to go through each bucket, similar to what we did last time we were together. Now that we have everyone here, my goal is to move through that as quickly as possible and get to a point where we can spend the majority of our time unpacking things like our new building, right? Expansion and capacity constraints, staffing, human resources, education and outreach, right? The things that I think we all agree need a little bit more alignment amongst the entire board. Okay, so we are, just for clarity here, we are going through this line item by line item, category by category, and we are going to not dismiss, but I guess instruct or align on the fact that the 10-year plan does a good enough job, and what is listed on this document is enough to capture the initiative, and for any more depth or detail, we go to the 10-year plan. Okay, anything in water quality improvement. Okay, and number 1, achieve long-term water quality goals for all 9 priority lakes by implementing diagnostic study and action plans. This is pretty well covered in the 10-year. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I do.
Everybody else agree?
You guys did it, you gotta turn it back on the top.
Perfect. Shoreline
Hi.
restoration. I'm sorry.
Hey, Yanni. Sorry, this is Manager Loth. I'm in the car, and in lieu of me unmuting and muting myself, me not replying is affirmative that I'm on the same page, and if I have objections, I will unmute myself.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
That's good.
That sounds good. Okay, next one, shoreline restoration and protection initiatives. 10-year plan does a good job of that. We're okay with
Second
that.
one on the water quality.
You go through each one of those?
So he said it.
I thought, I disagreed to all of them, maybe, okay, what about you? Hey, Yanni, I think we all agree that all those points are fine,
Wonderful.
and that's probably a slam dunk for us, so.
Okay, easy, awesome.
So we can go the green space.
Now we're going to move on to green space. And I do want to know, I think Manager Andrew mentioned this, right? That this is more of kind of a district-wide approach. But again, regardless, complete floodplain vulnerability assessment. Is that handled in the 10-year plan and it's ongoing and in motion?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Develop flood resiliency action plan, ongoing and in motion and covered in the 10-year.
Yes, part of our priority report.
Okay, perfect. I think if I remember correctly, the H&H model has been run for future flood scenarios in high vulnerability areas.
Yes,
We're just waiting on data from that, correct?
In certain areas, but
in certain areas.
not the entire district.
Yeah.
Okay. Strategically implement projects to increase volume storage and alleviate flooding.
Yes, that's been done. We have a priority resource list as well.
Okay.
These things have to be done in stages. You know, we can't do all of this at the same time. I think what would help people maybe is to have EOR do a 1, 2, 3 kind of plan so that we know, you know, what's coming.
Okay.
We're done with step 1.
Yep. Okay, that's great. Okay, next one, protect groundwater and other natural resources as an additional benefit.
But they have been identified. I think the next thing is to just talk with the community partners, and we've got a lot coming out of this strategic plan here to talk to them about. So when it's going to happen, I don't know, but it's certainly something that we are alert to.
I agree with that also, yes.
Okay. Implement greenway strategy for flood mitigation and community access. Where does that currently stand?
Well, it's all part of this area. It's hard to separate these things because that's really a part of what the identification of priority areas was all about. And so it has multi-purposes, and that certainly is one of them.
Okay. So is there a way to simplify and consolidate some of these things? Especially,
No, I think listing them is just fine, but it's under one category, as you can see.
correct.
So I think that just tells everybody looking at it that these things are all necessary to complete that initiative.
Okay.
The only thing I would like to bring up is like Manager Anderson sent a little more of a round about the statute that allows managers the freedom to actually identify these things.
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that. I don't think that's in our plan. So that could bear some time for the board to discuss that. My top of my head says that reading that through, it's only effective if there's a void out there, if nobody else has done that. And so I think our city and our county may have already done that, so we just can't come in and usurp that authority to pick those
We
things up.
could, but we're the leaders in identifying these open spaces and green spaces that we want to preserve, that are on our list of conservation or just keeping them natural for flood purposes. So it's interactive, and I was fully aware of that statute when I made the motion years ago to start this green space initiative because it is so important for us. Now, it took a while for us to get there because we had to do our H&H modeling all over again. You know, because we didn't have updated information really when we started, especially from Forest Lake. So we're past that point now.
Well, I would like to propose that we not discuss it here, but I think that's a very critical point. And if it is, if we do have the freedom and the authority to do that, and there is an open space for us to do it, that means that the city or the county haven't done it already. Then we should probably look at, because we can control that process
We are
according to statute.
we are in the driver's seat as far as identifying those spaces that haven't been developed yet that we want to protect. The problem comes in with these cities, we're not getting into this now, but the problem comes in when the cities or the counties have some type of ordinance, governing those areas. But, you know, there's ways to get around that. I mean, the county or the city can grant that property to us to maintain and to monitor and to manage. We can sign memorandums of agreement where they retain the ownership, but we still do the work.
Okay, I
So
think
there's
we don't have
lots
to
of
discuss it
things.
here, but I think it's an area we should look at, I think separately in a meeting or something, or staff should look at, come back.
So
About
just
what our
to-
degrees of freedom are.
I think
was-
that's something that EOR, you know, should do in presenting a comprehensive overview of this area and what it all means. All these things are specific work things that had to be done in
Right.
order to get us to that point.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Administrator
just
Kenny-
for,
Administrator Kenny wants to talk for a
Oh.
minute here.
I was just going to inform you, make sure that Yanni knew that managers Loth and manager Baki need to leave the meeting at 5 or 6:30, so in a little more than 35 minutes. So prioritizing discussion.
yep, I am aware. That sounds great. So it sounds like what was just mentioned needs a little bit more conversation. Obviously, now is not the time to do that. But what is like the one sentence to sum up what was just kind of mentioned that needs a little bit more, I guess, more conversation and planning amongst the board here.
Discussion at a board meeting, a regular board meeting.
Okay. And is what you were just discussing outlined in this list, or is there something that needs to be added to this?
No, nothing has to be added,
Oh, I think it should,
except
because
the EOR report.
I think we should have something like statute authority for managers to pick green space. Something like that, because that's what I read into it, although I think we're gonna have a hard time politically getting that done, but we should at least pursue it, so.
Probably a
I don't think it's gonna be-
request for rezoning,
Whatever it might be.
probably the
I don't think it's gonna be that. tough, but
process.
I think once they get the concept of it, they're gonna want it.
Not sure if that's exactly what it is, but that'll at least remind me. Okay, next one, strategically acquire lands and or easements to help alleviate flooding.
Mhm.
Yeah, that'll be coming as we move forward, as will the last one.
Great.
We're being opportunistic about that right now, but when we get this plan all together and we have gone through the priority plans with our engineers, we can have a map basically of where we want to have those open spaces and conservation areas.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
Yanni, can I clarify to make sure we're following your notes? When you're putting 10-year plan next to a row, are you saying that it's covered, it's fleshed out in the 10-year plan and we don't need to flesh it out here?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Is that what, do the board agree that, you know, the Greenway strategy and the acquiring lands to alleviate flooding, do you agree that that is really fleshed out in the 10-year plan? Because I might offer that it's touched on in the 10-year plan, but I think that's kind of what we're trying to do with this current data gathering effort, is to really flesh it out.
Well, that's what we're doing right now, is we are fleshing it out, but we can't do it without EOR providing us with the end game, if you will. So we still have work to do there, but all of these elements are, it's not bad to list them because it reminds everybody how comprehensive this is. So I'm not opposed to this.
But this will come as we move forward in our plan. This has to be done and it will be done, but we can't do it until we have specific
Right,
examples that we're working on right now, actually, to put together. So
Yeah.
the plan is there, it's just a matter of implementing it now. So, and we've got the staff and that to do it. The only thing I don't think we were looking at is this idea of the statute helping us to preemptively go in and pick some areas. So,
we have to do a map. That's
yeah,
part of it.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do want to make sure though that we have the wording correct when we're talking about this, and that's what the statute was all about too, is giving it the proper name. And
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me if somebody else does, but it's green space and open, what's the, open space. It's greenway and open space, I think is the. I'll pull it up here now.
Open space and green belts in statute.
Thank you. Green belt and open space. Thank you, Emma.
Okay, and just to bring a little bit more clarity here, Emily, it's like, I think I have a pretty decent idea of things that need more effort from the board in order to get to a point where it can 100% be delegated to staff. Okay, and if there is anything that, yeah, it's mentioned in the 10-year plan, but we still need to do a couple things in order to get to a point where it can go to implementation / execution. I'm just gonna bold them, right? And we'll come back to them, okay? Because I hear what you're saying, and I also, hear what Manager Anderson is saying as well. Is, it is mentioned, it is covered, but there are things that still need to be done in order for us to, quote unquote, kind of, flesh this all out and be on the same page here, okay? But I do, I don't know, approach, having that conversation about the statutes like that requires a board meeting. That's planned time, making sure that we understand that and have visibility on, leveraging some time to have everyone together to go through that discussion to be able to get to the next step. Okay, green space. Anything else that needs to be added to this, or do we feel like this is pretty well encompassing of anything that would fall under our green space category?
I'm comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable with it. Plus our adaptive management philosophy says that as we move through this, if something comes up, then we need to adjust.
Okay,
Mhm.
So that's built into our thinking already. So we jump on things like that if they pop up, I think.
Yeah,
We've
that's
got a
right.
good track record of doing that.
Okay.
And the staff has a good track of doing it and also picking up the pieces to make it
Mhm.
happen. So
But again, the title over in the green column should be, you don't have to do it now, but it should be green belt and open space. And that covers the land acquisition and all of that kind of thing that we're talking about here too.
green belt is 2 words.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on. Education and outreach. Number 1, expand education outreach for shoreline restoration and flood resiliency plans. Are we ready to execute on that? Is that well covered and thought out in the 10-year plan? Or is there more effort from the board that's necessary to be able to fully delegate something to the staff to execute?
Not at this time, but we are in the process of hiring an organization, a consultant that will help us get there.
yeah, so basically all these points will come and be reprioritized and set up when the PR firm we hire is on board.
We went through an RFP process with that, right?
We've got it down to 2 people. April 15th, we select somebody and then we start working on it.
Great. Would
Well,
we,
we interview and make a recommendation to the board at the next meeting.
Right.
So it'd be the last meeting in April.
okay, wonderful. Do we agree that everything in this category will be well thought out and planned when we partner with the right PR / marketing support?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a good plan now, and what this is going to allow us to do is have a good plan on a number of topics at one time. A lot of them in this table that we've been talking about, and then also for the future.
Great.
Now,
when-
here is, we wrangled with some of the definitions and the words, but we'll be looking at adding, something to that column after the board fully has a discussion about it, okay? It's kind of like the green belt and open space. So just to make sure that we're covering all of the bases, it will be education. One of the topics that I think should be added, or titles that should be added, is engagement. We want public engagement, yeah. And then the outreach gets more into the marketing side. It's the difference between dealing with people individually and building supporters that way, and then doing marketing to the masses and trying to build awareness.
Okay. Do we all agree with that? Is that this should be broken out into two categories?
Well, that's what we have to talk about.
Yeah.
I think it can all be done under one, but the board needs to talk about that. We'll do that, I think, at another meeting.
Okay. And what were those? How did you? What were your wording on those two? It was outreach or no?
No, it's engagement, public engagement. You're working one-on-one to build supporters for your efforts, and then also educating.
Okay, great. Okay, do we have any amount of time? Okay, so, and I'm just gonna kind of walk through this. We went through our RFP process. We narrowed it down to 2 candidates for outsourcing marketing support. We'll be making a decision on that, it sounds like, in the coming weeks. And then from there, what is allocated to them in regards to the board's time to build the plan? Is that something that still needs to be done? Like, these are all things that I think would fall into that plan. But do we have clarity on exactly, like, where does the staff fall into that? Or is that something with the board and the marketing agency? Is that the staff and the marketing agency?
No, we already have people assigned to that area.
Sure.
And so those 2 staffers they were all part of this process, getting up to having a consultant come in. And they will remain, and other staff can be used periodically as needed for certain things, but primarily there will be 2.
Okay.
And they're already engaged in this. And it won't be something that the board will approve a plan, but the board won't be involved in this production of the plan. We'll see it when it's done.
Okay, strategic planning and governance. There's one line item in here. There are some spaces for anything else. If anyone had anything else to add to this after we go through the first one, now would be the time to have that discussion. But the first one is maintain core/critical governance functions, including board of managers, advisory committees, annual reports, audit, budget, watershed management plan, and review of local water management plans. Sounds like this is all stuff we already do. Is it very clear in which how we do this? And is there any discussion or clarity that needs to be brought to this? Because I feel like there's quite a bit to unpack there.
Well, I think we have a very good program right now. I think that just like any rules and regulations, you should be revisiting it from time to time. And sometimes there's changes and sometimes there aren't. but, we might want to put, something in there. I know the Minnesota Watershed Organization reviews their plan, purposefully every 6 years. So that might be a good thing to put in, something like that. But if it doesn't need it, it doesn't need it. So, but there is a statement that we should be looking at it periodically. And
Okay,
of course, if there's anything that board members want to change, they certainly can bring that up and handle it anytime, but at least there's a statement of purpose to do so.
okay, I like that. What is our current, and again, a lot like the budgetary things, all that stuff, like omit that. If we just think about this through the planning lens, right? We do our 10-year plan. It sounds like, how long does it take us to build that 10-year plan? Is that over the course of a year, a couple years? Is it a couple?
18 months, maybe 2 years. Emily can speak better to that, but we got started early and it gets intense. It takes a long
Okay.
time.
Okay. And how often would we say the board comes back to that plan? Once every 8 years, or is that something we're doing pretty consistently? Every other year, every 5 years?
You mean for revisions? What are you talking
Not
about?
necessarily for revisions, more so for alignment and prioritization.
Always. I mean, I think we're
Okay.
doing it every year.
Okay.
It's up to staff to provide the leadership on that.
Yeah.
Staff provides the engineering leadership and engineering staff does that. And because we don't know all the background that's required to maybe pick the priorities and so forth.
Exactly.
If we do, then we speak up.
Okay.
But, so actually that'll start in June. We'll start working on our operational plan for next year in May and June and go through August with that. And
Okay.
they'll bring a proposal to us with all budget items and costs, and then we'll start asking questions. Well, what happened to this in the 10-year plan? How come we're not doing that? It's scheduled for this year. And then there'll be a discussion about it or something like that. So that's the way it works.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Do we feel like there's anything missing from that process? And this is for Mike, if there's anything on your end that we could improve upon, or even from the board's perspective. It sounds like we have a cadence that works and we maintain it, and it does a pretty good job of ensuring that we're breaking out that 10-year plan into annual initiatives, operational plans, budgets, etc.
Mike, Kenny?
It's, Madam President, managers. So I just want to make sure though that there's clarity of, so the 10-year plan in order to update certain elements of it, if we want to pursue grants or do certain things, just take certain actions, it needs to be referenced within the plan. So there's two elements of this, looking at the plan and then making sure that we're annually proceeding through that. But a plan amendment is a very deliberate process through the state agency that we have to go through. And that then is a separate piece where, like our rules, we have a running list of things that we feel that we want to tackle the next time we get around to doing a rules update. So, so there's just two pieces I want to make sure that, Yanni, you in particular, as you're working through with the board here, that there's that distinction, I guess.
There are ways though to change something in the plan if it's just a different route to the same objective, to the same end. So we're talking about when we do amendments to the plan, real amendments, this is something brand new. And it doesn't have anything to do with what's in the plan. And so you have to go through, as Mike said, you have to go through this months-long process to get it changed. So we try to avoid that wherever we can. But there's owners, it has to be a really big deal in order to go through that.
Okay, that's fair. So that's a pretty intentional process that needs to be executed in order to make fundamental changes to the plan, right? Or add anything, take anything. But if we're just taking a different path to the same goal that's already been mentioned, we have some optionality to be able to make those decisions and stay nimble in the moment.
We have adaptive management as one of our guiding keystones. So that allows you to do that. That allows you to make alterations as you get more information, or, you know, if it's going to, like I said before, achieve the same goal, but just in a different way than we had planned, then it's okay. You're all right doing that.
Okay, great. Okay. Anything else that needs to be added into strategic planning and governance?
I would like to suggest that, I mean, it's probably obvious, but our whole purpose of doing the strategic planning is to provide organizational direction and agreement, consensus, and momentum. Again, that's probably obvious, but I think we need to state it here as well. That's why we entered into this process, was to get us all on the same page and pulling in the same direction.
Manager Baki, do you think that this strategic planning process, I know this was a bit long, like this was a much longer process because there was a good bit on the front end of it, but now that mission, vision, values are taken care of, is this something that you feel like should intentionally happen annually, but every 2 years? Like what cadence in a perfect world do you think that we should be deploying something like this?
Yes, I do. I think it should be an annual process where we go back and revisit. Are we on track? Are we not? What do we need to change? I mean, that's kind of what Steve was talking about as well, is, you know, that's part of our process anyway. But again, the strategic plan should be a blueprint for that. Should be a, what's the term?
Framework.
Framework?
Yeah, a framework. Touchstone. I think touchstone was the term I was thinking of.
Okay. Anything else that needs to be added to strategic planning and governance?
I don't see it, but I was mentioning earlier that we should put an intentional review down like we did for the other area. So maybe every 6 years, we take a look at our strategic, is this strategic plan and governance together? Okay. For the governance side anyway.
Okay. So is this more of like reflective? Can you just like, how would you sum that up? Or do you think it's pretty well summed up already?
Well, I think it's pretty well summed up. It's just like the rules. Anytime you have a manual of any kind, you
Yeah.
want to refresh it. And you can leave it open-ended and do it when you want to, or you can say at least every 6 years.
Yep.
And that way you have something intentional as a reminder, and you may have to do it or you may not, but at least it's a reminder.
Okay. Are we doing that as needed currently? Anything governance related, like rules, regulations?
So
things
we
like
have
that?
them, yeah, we have them, and we're reminded by the attorney to, you know, review things. He reviews them on anything legal that needs to be changed. But
Okay.
this would be just for the governance part, not the strategic plan.
Okay.
Because we're looking at that annually, so
Okay.
it's not a governance meeting.
Got it. Okay, anything else in strategic planning or governance that we're missing here?
That I can think of.
Great. Okay. Next here, I know a few of us only have a couple more minutes, try to move quickly here. Project operations and maintenance. Number 1, implement comprehensive O&M plan, including regular inspections, reporting, and maintenance activities. Does this need more from us?
I don't think so, because the ultimate reviewer of this is our engineering firm.
Okay.
And this, by law, our engineers, our civil engineer has to be the superintendent of all of our public works, all of our public projects.
Okay,
So that we already have that built in to our structure.
great. Okay. Maintain and update online O&M database for program documentation and efficiency. Who's
Mhm.
responsible for that and who has ownership over that? Engineers again?
And no, that would be staff. Engineers are the overseers of everything, so they'll have input.
Okay.
And they'll be looking for holes on our behalf and plugging those
Okay.
up. Yeah,
Mike, maybe you can speak to this. What is the frequency for this? How often are we making those updates and revisions to the database and whatnot? Is that like an ongoing thing? Is that something we do once a year? Is it a couple times a month? Does it depend?
It's a minimum of annually, but, you know, so staff doing the inspections and, you know, any maintenance items, and annually, some items require a visit more than once a year though, too, but depending on what it is, so, but everything, you know, we run through everything annually in some form or the other. I'd say that the database itself is ongoing, but it's looked at numerous times a year.
yes,
So just following up on that, Mike, these are all projects that we've done, correct?
Correct. There's, I don't know if you're alluding to this, but on the permitting side, we also do inspections of things that others have constructed under the permitting. So,
Yeah, because there's a timetable, they have to be inspected, like if it's a holding pond, it has to be inspected every 4 years or something like that, or,
well, all those are annual as well.
okay. So then, what about the little comfort diagnostic work we got identified as stormwater pond from one some condominium association that needs to be probably cleaned out? So who isn't expecting that because it got that far to be actually a phosphorus pump? Shouldn't that have been inspected by somebody every 2 or 3 years?
are you talking?
Yeah, whoever owns, who have ownership responsibility, it's either gonna be the HOA or the municipality.
So is that on our inventory list to go and make sure they do that?
No more than city stormwater ponds elsewhere.
Which should be on the list also. Haven't we prioritized them for them already for about top 10?
Are you talking about the one on Heath Avenue?
I don't know, I just.
But so the city of Forest Lake, for example, has roughly 182 stormwater ponds. So we had offered to do the CI biobase to see what capacity is, because the treatment capacity is not linear. You know, once you get to about 50% full or something, you've lost roughly 50% or 80% of the treatment capacity. So it's not, so that was, but that's entirely part of the MS4 infrastructure. So city of Forest Lake, the city of Wyoming are now, that's all part of their MS4 infrastructure that they have to inspect and maintain, et cetera. So, but if we identify something through our diagnostic monitoring, then we bring it back to their attention. So,
Okay.
I think we're talking about Liberty Ponds. And Liberty Ponds has their own, we don't have sewer and water like the cities do, so it's all well and septic. But this is a group septic system, and they went before the council in Wyoming.
I don't think this is a
6, 7
stormwater.
months ago. Okay, all right, this is different.
Okay, I keep bringing this up every year, but
Oh, I think you're talking about the new place we're talking about. Yeah, okay. There's going to be a big storm, catchment pond, as part of that development on Heath Avenue.
on a new development or the
No,
Liberty Ponds?
It's the one that we planned for maintaining, cleaning the water, having the phosphorus.
Oh, the one that we're doing right now,
Yes,
iron
the one
and
that
sand
we're doing
filter?
right now. Yes,
Yeah, that'll be ours, and we'll do.
no, I'm talking about the one that's already out there that two guys out to monitor and determine that was a phosphorus source. It was in your, right up for your diagnostic Comfort Lake, little Comfort Lake down there in that area.
Well-
It wasn't, it
Yeah.
was not just, actually, we did the diagnostic monitoring and determined that the pond for that development was not the source, because we wanted to evaluate whether this system was the major contributor. It's more ubiquitous of the whole entire system, because it's ditched.
I think he's talking about the one project that's ongoing right now. It's right at the corner of Heath and Highway 8. And there was a lot of rough times when that first Liberty Ponds was built and all of the sediment was coming down the ditch system on Heath Avenue and then running right into Little Comfort. That's being corrected by this new system that we're,
No, that's a different, but let's
Yeah.
move on.
okay. Still know what you're talking about.
I'm gonna have to make a list and just get through all our lists.
Yeah.
No, no,
I'll
no.
drive around and
Mhm.
identify the stormwater ponds, because I just don't think we have them all. And then when somebody gets a permit, they're responsible for maintaining that, right? Like the holding system under the apartment building where the old library is. So
Mhm.
who monitors that?
So annually, we require that they submit an inspection
Okay.
report.
So that's on our list. That's on our inventory. Okay,
Correct.
That's the kind of thing I'm looking at. Not
Yeah.
necessarily ours, but it was created through our permit.
Correct.
And then we walk away and they have responsibility, and we have to be the good cop, bad cop in that situation.
Right, so,
So,
and they may require multiple inspections through the year, and we will then just at some point say, we're gonna come out and take a look at it. You know,
Okay.
ourselves.
Right.
We're keeping an eye on. it.
Correct.
It's not like foresight, but
all right,
anyway, so let's
let's move on. I think we're okay there.
Okay, next one is, and this is very vague, but collaborate with our engineers. Can someone bring some clarity to what that is? Is that something that is defined, right, and on a specific cadence? Is that, yeah, I mean, just to go a little bit deeper in that.
Well, we're required by law to have a civil engineer
Sure.
that directs all of our projects and oversees the maintenance of those projects. Staff
Okay.
may perform the day-to-day stuff, but it's directed by and overseen by the engineers. That's a requirement of law. Mike?
Madam President, managers, Yanni, so I wasn't here when that was put together, but I guess my contribution to that would be that all of the operation and maintenance plan items get a review by the engineers. Or sometimes are just flat out developed, that we just ask them, we need an operation and maintenance plan for this particular thing that we've constructed. So depending, it's either, them doing a review or them developing the operation and maintenance plan itself.
That's a resource we leverage as needed, right?
Correct.
Great.
Ongoing.
Okay. There's something that's not on here, and I don't know if it accidentally got erased or got moved. But the new building capacity expansion, is that something that would fall into this category, or do we feel like that should be somewhere else?
No, separate.
Not even on here.
Those are, well, it was on mine. When I,
Yeah, and I think it maybe it accidentally got bumped off somehow. Well,
yeah,
it was kind of changing hands here. Where do we feel like that should align? Should it be its own category? Because it's such a
yes,
massive
yes, it
thing?
should be. This is a one-off thing that it's not gonna happen. The rest of what we're talking about are ongoing programs. You know, so,
Okay. So even as a one-off thing, I mean, project operations and maintenance, that's exclusive to the projects we are executing, right? That has nothing to do with, I don't know,
Mhm.
changing light bulbs in a room, things of that capacity.
no,
Okay, so do we need another category here, I guess is the question.
I would just say operational items, you know, and under that operational items is, you know, the day-to-day stuff. I hope we're not gonna list this.
No,
But,
no, no, no,
I mean,
I
that's-
really
that's
just wanna
just-
focus on that one, but that one big lofty one. I
Yeah.
just, you know.
I would
what's-
just call it,
what's
I
planned?
would just say the building, because it's, you know, not gonna happen again. Once this is done, it's gonna be there for a long time.
Okay,
So it's just a special category. I wouldn't call it capacity. It's not that, it's just a new building.
but is it? All right. I will entertain that for a second until we get through it. That makes sense. Okay. Great, we'll get there. Okay, anything else on the project operations and maintenance side that needs to be added to this list?
I can't think of anything.
Okay, I'm gonna jump over human resources and leadership because there's nothing in there yet. We'll come back to that. Next one, law and regulation. Ditch law, adhere to Minnesota drainage law requirements as appropriate to drainage authority. Is this, I mean, sounds like this is something we are actively doing. I know this came from staff, meaning I'm sure there's a good bit of capacity that's designated to either maintain this or manage it. Yeah, thoughts?
Permitting, are you talking about permitting? What are you talking about now? Sorry.
Yeah, that's, I was gonna say, we would need permitting under that section.
Well, there it is, right there. District.
So I have two here. I have law and regulation, and then I have
Section.
district rules and permitting program.
Yeah, my apologies.
So they're split out. Do they need to be split out? I guess is my first question. Are they two separate things?
No, not really. I mean, the permitting program is how we implement the rules. So they're really connected.
And I guess maybe they are just the same thing because, or should be combined because it's the only area that the district has that's statutorily driven.
Mhm.
So from a law standpoint, that's district rules and our permitting are a result of the statutory requirement for that.
Emily had something to chime in here.
Yeah, Madam President Managers, I could just add that this was called out specifically in the workload analysis, and that Appendix A, they did an analysis of the core critical functions, kind of the things that the district must do. And obviously the rules and, you know, erosion control, stormwater management, all those things is one of them. And then ditch law was specifically called out as one of those things, just to always have there.
Okay, thank you.
Ditch law. We only have one ditch. We have one judicial ditch, JD6. That's it. It's under our control.
One is still more than zero.
What about the ditch that runs through Broadway and down?
No, it's part of the Sunrise River system. That
Yeah, that
was,
was abandoned.
That's a ditch.
that was,
It wasn't
it
there.
used to be the Sunrise.
It wasn't there ever.
It was a trickle running to the Sunrise. It's
It
true.
is no more.
Huh?
The counties have abandoned those judicial JD1 and JD2.
Okay,
So
still there.
physical ditches, yes.
That's why when we do the Sunrise project, we'll start looking more like a river system.
Yeah.
Got a lot of sediment in a straight line ditch.
Looking for direction. Should we consolidate these two buckets or these two categories? And can ditch law make its way down into district rules and permitting program?
I wouldn't do that.
No. Okay.
It's separated now because of
It's got its own,
Function, yeah.
yeah, it's got its own set of.
It may
rules.
not be too important to us, but it is to other areas, that's why it's separated
Yeah,
out.
it gets, it gets taken care of in the ditch law. That's part of the statute for that area, so.
Mhm.
So you can leave it separate.
Okay, is there anything else that should be added to law and regulation?
Not for, no. Well, you should say ditch law and regulation in the pink area. Otherwise, it's so broad. We're not talking about a broad thing here. We're talking about ditch law. And whatever, what's that?
So instead of ditch law being in the category, ditch law should be the category. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. It's very distinct, and we have one, so we don't have to sweat about it, but. If you take out just that word ditch law and move it to the front, like you're doing right now, then we have to adhere to what the government regulations are.
What you have in quotations, she's suggesting remove that and then simply adhere to Minnesota drainage law.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, is this an ongoing thing? How much attention does this need? Does the board have any, and like, how do we do this?
Well, we do it as required, but we only have one ditch, and it was just transformed into a better system when we did the work on JD6. So I don't know that we're gonna have to look at that ever again.
Oh, yes, no, we have legal requirements for the engineer to inspect it at least every 5 years, certain other things like that, so there's,
Mhm.
it'll be on, there'll be two pieces, one is the inspections, and then the other is, if we ever did get into a scenario where landowners petitioned for either one of two things, cleaning it out or abandonment, all of a sudden it would just take up a lot of time.
Hmm.
So we don't encourage either one of those at this point.
Is there
But
anything proactively that needs to be done to limit the chances of something like that happening?
not really, they just have legal rights to do so.
Not if they're not maintaining the ditch, though. If they're
Right,
not-
there's,
if they're not
yes,
Maintaining the ditch, even though it's been
Yeah.
abandoned, if they're not maintaining it and they're sending pollution downstream, then the governing body has the right to stop it, hold it back, or under control. So,
yes, but
so I don't see that happening.
Okay. So right now, all we really need to do to adhere to that is go through an inspection process every 5 years. That's
I
what we
believe,
are.
right, I believe that's the minimum, yes.
Okay, great. Anything else that needs to be added to ditch law and regulation? Otherwise, we're moving on. Okay. All right, district rules and permitting program. Evaluate district rules once every 5 years and update as necessary.
Yep.
Okay, how do we do that? Do we allocate a board meeting to go through that, or does the staff do that? What does that look like?
It's running fine, actually, it's gotten a lot better in the last couple of years, so it's an area we don't really have to talk too much about, I believe.
No, but we have to be aware of the rules, and so if they do need to be updated,
Right.
if we're having problems somewhere, we do have to look at the rules and see what we should be doing to eliminate those problems. And I think what we're doing here is just fine. I mean, I agree. I think we have a great program, but there are some things that need to be changed. And when you do that, of course, you've got to go through that whole process of public announcements and meeting with everybody, taking that rule to everybody that's an LGU within our boundaries. So there's some process to it. You don't want to do it willy-nilly, but if there's something that needs to be done, we have the right to do it anytime we choose. So I think what we're saying here is that we're going to do an intentional review every 5 years, even if it's just to make sure that everything's still running properly. Or whenever something serious needs to be addressed. But other than that, I think, it is going smoothly and it's done its job.
Well, let's move on if we can. Everybody agree?
Yanni's ready to move on.
Okay, I have one on here, implement permitting program. Is that already been implemented and we're just executing on it, or does something need to get changed there?
I think we already addressed that. Didn't we? I only heard the end of that, what you just said, but you said if something needs to be changed,
Yeah,
Right.
and
that's
so
the trigger.
it's been done. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
We have a permitting program that staff can manage, et cetera. We're all on the same page with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Okay, now. That's it. Okay, we've got two buckets here that need some time and energy to really kind of get some alignment on, start to kind of pack some initiatives and some clarity on what the path forward is. And I'll leave this up to everyone else. We can start with human resources and leadership, or we can start with the building.
Well, let's knock down human resources and leadership first.
Okay, my thoughts.
It's gonna happen.
Okay, so, and I'm just going to speak to this for a little bit, and then we'll kind of open the room up. So when I hear about this, I think of, staff review processes, accountability meetings, a clear understanding of career paths and trajectory, keeping our thumb and keeping visibility on our retention numbers and churn with staff, making sure we have best in class benefits to retain staff. What is our recruiting process to locate best in class skilled labor or skilled individuals if the time comes to hire people? If there are internal issues, what is protocol and where do we lean to navigate those internal issues? Staff culture and making sure we're nurturing the culture within the organization. So those are all some things that I just wanted to kind of put out into the room. I don't know what we have. I don't know what we don't have, but this has been something that quite a few of you, as well as staff, right, has wanted some time on, and just to get some initiatives and clarity in regards to how we consistently improve this. But yeah, that's really it. I guess let's just start with just like a brief open dialogue here of what are we missing, or what do we feel like we're missing, or what needs to kind of be added to the list.
The only thing I could think of in there was succession planning, which we've talked quite a bit about, and I think we're in the course of working through that. But it's one of those things that it'd be nice to know, not just to protect against future shock, but to understand there is a way forward when things, for whatever reasons, change. And sometimes we don't control those changes.
Well, we don't really get involved with personnel management as a board. So I think the two key people would be Mike and his assistant in terms of human resources, right? Those are the two people that have been struggling with this over the last, as requirements come up. Obviously, when COVID came in, a lot of things changed, and so that put a lot of pressure on everybody, and a lot of things changed.
Yep.
So we've tried to work through that as best we can, but I still think that some employees need a better understanding of our salary structure and how it works. And so we've got that in place now. We got a new one just finished, right, Mike? We saw that.
Well, you've seen the draft. but
Draft,
you
the
don't
draft.
have- yeah.
When that comes back, we need to review it with staff again.
Mhm.
And then, I think that, you and, I can't think of her name.
Ellen,
Ellen would be able to make a list of things that maybe we should look at as a board to address further, but I mean, we put in a performance system and, stretch goals, et cetera, and so I'm sure that that's still in a learning process, but you know, I think we just need to identify what that is and have appropriate meetings, maybe with the board, but selectively to talk to some of the employees about different situations.
What do you mean?
What?
What do you mean different situations?
Well, I mean, if they have a question about stretch goals, that seems to be a confusion for some people, so we can talk as our own experience of what stretch goals are. You know, and share some ideas in that respect but
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind is that we are a small company. We are a small entity.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to be able to do the things that large companies can do. But one thing that we made very clear at the beginning, and Steve and I went to a staff meeting, I think it was early 2004, right?
February, yeah.
Yeah, and we talked to the staff about what the board's expectation is and what the district's expectation was when we started hiring people. And you know, we can't offer everything that you might find in a bigger watershed package or even in their salaries, but we're looking always for the best and the brightest because we are a innovative, aggressive environment because we want to get things done and we want to do them in a way that shows the public that we don't have to take 50 years to clean up mistakes of the past. We can do it quicker than that if we use new techniques. We don't have to rely on what others have done. We have to rely on the science. And we have to rely on new things, on the history of how that new thing has performed. And you know, so we're not afraid to do that. We're not afraid to do that with employees either. Mike's done a good job of guiding people into other positions and trying it out and seeing if they have the capacity for doing that. And that's worked out. People have moved on and taken on supervisor roles and leadership roles, and so that's been a good thing. So I don't have a lot to say here other than, you know, we do have a personnel committee, and if employees want to talk to that committee about certain things, they should be able to do that. I mean, maybe that's not known, it should be in our policy manual, employee policy manual. So there are outlets, you know, so that if they're not happy with something, they could come and talk to the committee, which is made up of board members, 2 board members. So I think there's outlets there for all of that. And we do the best salaries we can, given our size and given the levy amounts that we have to work with. Go ahead, Mike.
Manager Anderson, managers, Yanni, so well wanted to work group is not a committee. So remember,
Thank you.
so for
what?
It's a work group, not
not a committee, so I guess I wouldn't mind just kind of running through, Yanni, you had a list there. You know, a couple of things that, so the entire metro is by law required to be covered by watershed management organizations of some type. Some of them are different legal structures, so some of them are what they refer to as WMOs, water management organizations, that are funded by local municipalities. They have a different, they may still have a board, but it's normally a dual hatted thing from a city or something like that on the board for that WMO. Others are watershed districts like the one that we are here. And then even within those, there's differentiation between those that are petitioned and organized by cities and those that were citizen petitions, which is the case here. So, but all that being said, I have for years tried to, and most recently again in February, convince my fellow watershed administrators to collaborate on hiring, for example, the same firm to do our salary studies structure. That would be too much common sense, in my opinion. But and to a level of great frustration because we're all spending money and because there's not alignment across all the organizations, then you end up with some level of competition for the same pool of people. Because they often know each other, and I mean there's far fewer people within our profession than just about anything else. So there's that part of it. So best in class benefits, same problem. Everybody is they're hit and miss on what they have. From my experience, even across government entities, I think we're at a very high end. I think that maybe the one thing that I know that some others have higher PTO or things like that, but however, compared to industry standards in the private sector, we're in the top whatever 10. So it's that area where the public is just becoming upset with government, right? Because they're handing out so much stuff and they're getting frustrated by that. At least I hear a lot of it because a lot of my friends and others are not in public sector and family members, and I hear a lot of complaints. The turnover, we have some, but it's within industry standards. If you look for knowledge workers, we do agree that the district staff are knowledge workers category. I know Ellen has indicated that. But it's still a good performance metric to track for the organization. And we do not currently do that, but we could do that. I think that would be a good thing to add on. Trying to think of some of the other things you mentioned, Yanni. Yeah.
I mean, it's, we always have a tendency to, when we hear terms like leadership, right, or HR, like it's, we always gravitate towards kind of those objective things, right? Is our salary good enough? Does it run, or is it aligned with industry benchmarks? It sounds like you have some constraints, right, to be able to work around or within, right? And you offer the best you possibly can, and there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe that's not what needs attention, right? Or that's not what needs more building out or more clarity. When I hear that, right, and I've done this, I know other professionals that have done it. Like I'm sure we've all worked someplace or been a part of something that's larger than them, right, and have taken a cut in regards to benefits, money, etc., because we're either learning a ton, we're growing a ton, or we're a part of something that we truly believe in and stand behind. So, I want to, some of those things like, managing churn or turnover is a key performance indicator to make sure we are within those standards and that we understand that, people are going to move on to greener pastures, and there is a little bit of a revolving door with some of the roles and, some of the other districts, and that we're all kind of dealing with the same resource pool, if you will, for some of these roles. But my mind always goes back to just the culture of the company, right? Internally. Is the staff aware of, our cutting edge initiatives and how we approach problems and the value we've provided our community and what they are a part of? Are we implementing and managing a performance-based culture where staff members, have accountability meetings that, give them good clarity on what success means for their role, and ensuring that they have kind of that bone to chase and have ownership over to ensure that, if they win, you win, and if you win, the board wins, and so on and so forth. So there's nuance to this. It sounds like a lot of the objective things are pretty well taken care of. And to be honest, I would assume so, right? It is a government entity, and there's things that exist for a reason. And if you're on the kind of the upper side of that scale, then fantastic, that's awesome. But, a couple things that I just jotted down here, and it's not necessarily, something that needs to stay, but it sounds like succession planning is one. Making sure we have contingency plans to remove key dependencies on any one staff member. And if for whatever reason, they leave for something that we don't have control over, it's not something that's going to set us back a couple months or a year or whatnot. It's something that we can move swiftly into the next stage with the next individual, get them up to speed as quickly and effectively as possible to be able to consistently charge forward. So that's something that I'm hearing. It sounds like we've defined and have done salary. We've defined clear salaries and benefit structures for every role at the business or at the organization. I don't know if that's been implemented, meaning given to each of those people so they can see it and understand what that trajectory looks like for themselves. But that would be what's
No,
that?
I'm good.
Okay. And then, and this is pretty vague, right? But I don't even know if this is relevant. But it doesn't matter how large you are. It doesn't matter how small you are. It's possible to implement and sustain and nurture performance-based cultures in any organization, whether it's 3 people, 30 people, 300 people, etc. It's abiding by very clear guidelines and metrics to support their performance in doing so. And that doesn't mean it has to be super sterile, right, to be a part of, but it does mean that for the staff or for the individual that they have clarity on what success means for their responsibility and their role. And that clarity is supported by 1 or 2 objective metrics of some kind that they're keeping their thumb on and then having conversations about with leadership or whoever's managing them. And that can be, it could be you, it could be someone else that's, on the leadership team. Maybe it's one of the engineers that our staff are working closely with. I don't know. And again, I'm just kind of, externally processing some of this and really just ringing a couple bells if there is anything that needs to be added and ensuring that, we're not leaving any rocks over, not.
But it might be interesting, Madam President, Yanni, for me to, maybe a couple of staff would be willing to share some of their current SMART goals. So, because, the history is such that 11 years ago, it was just the administrator, right? There was, and 10 years ago, Emily came on as the first full-time staff person. So, and we've now, grown to 11 in a seasonal. So, we started with the SMART goals formally 4 years ago. Prior to that, I've always done something similar to that. Was what I had learned at the very beginning of my career. What are you going to do? What are the things you're going to do within the next, year coming forward? But typically, it was 6 months, and then so now we're doing them quarterly. But it'd be good just to see if those align with what, because I'm always open to trying new things. And I mean, just yesterday, I asked staff to look at our work plan and try to realign some of the hours and work to adapt to what I see as the changing needs of the organization, within the coming year here. So, but the other thing that I guess I've always, because you kind of touch on some of that, because it's obviously different within a public sector, right? If trying to like pull the next rabbit out of the hat, right, and do something versus having a sibling that was at the beginning of Buffalo Wild Wings and was able to retire quite early because of the stock options. So you have a financial outcome. So we've
I've thought about this and I don't know if there's any applicability to it, but boy, it sure would be great if I could have done that 10 years ago with the board and said, if I get all these lakes to the state standard, 20 years ahead of schedule, what at a cost frame of something, would that have, and now we're moving into some other areas because we're asking the staff to continue to, we raise the bar year after year after year, and they respond. And there's nothing so it's just the professional, I guess, gratitude, if you will, of them doing that. But
Yeah.
I've always been curious if there's a framework that you've seen out there that could possibly work. And since we're having this conversation, for staff, especially those that are, been committed and I expect will continue to be committed to the organization.
I cannot think of anything. I mean, I can think of a lot of things off the top of my head. I don't know if they translate to the public side of things. I can already think of 3 people that I'll have conversations with in our time apart about this, because I think it is valid. And, whether it's long-term commitments and being a part of something for an extended period of time, whether it's, shorter term incentives to be able to drive towards something, it sounds like everyone that's a part of the organization on the staff side has always they've always done what's asked and then some, right? Like, you keep raising the bar and they're meeting the board or meeting, leadership where they are consistently, which just speaks to the fact that you've got some really, really impressive and solid people that work for you. And that's not always an easy thing to say, frankly. And sometimes they're, intervention is a necessity, and having SMART goals, accountability meetings, key performance indicators linked to compensation plans, incentives, etc., right, is a necessity to be able to facilitate a performance-based culture. And it sounds like y'all have been doing it, right, without some of those things. And it's just because they either love what they do or they believe in where we're going, right, one or the other.
Or both.
Yeah, both. Yeah, very, very true.
Well, I mean, just recently it occurred to me within the last few months that we don't have everything set up for recognizing people that in the longevity framework.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody's been here, at the 2 or 3 year mark, and 5 years or 10 years. It's appropriate to acknowledge that in some way, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But we don't have anything set up for that. But
Okay.
It's something that I'd like to try to get implemented, within the year here.
A work group for personnel could be part of that.
Sure. Yeah.
For,
Mhm.
that's what I did in companies I work for, and it works well, especially with something like this that you're trying to get started. And it'll take over time, but at least you've got input
Get some staff input.
from the board and a senior person, obviously. You want that on the first one anyway. But there are a couple of things that I thought of here that might be worth putting down. One is making sure that every person has a detailed account of what their job is, what they do every day, and what they're supposed to do every day, and things that might happen once a week or once a month or something like that. It's just a good thing to have in case they leave or they're sick or ill and somebody has to step in and take over their job. So I would say that would be a good thing to get our people to do. And the other thing is that just like you were saying, recognition or having lunch brought in some days, or providing donuts on Friday mornings, the wrap up of the week. Little things like that matter. And you could fill in the blanks with whatever. Maybe people don't eat donuts anymore, so it's not that, it's something else. But we could have, senior people bring in ideas for that. But that kind of thing I think helps. I was impressed last February, was it, that we met, Steve and I met with the staff. I was impressed with the dedication that was shown. as we talked about different things at the table. And I think what might help also is maybe a statement from the board that becomes part of their manual, or it's a separate sheet, of course, that can be updated, but it gets handed out at the same time as their personnel manual does, and it just sets the tone from the board on, you know, what we do, what our objectives are, what the community's objectives are, and that we want them to be part of it. And you know, they're going to have fun while they do it, and they're going to be dedicated to something that's going to last forever. So we can do that. I think that might help too, is having a purpose statement.
Well,
on the board.
yeah, thank you, Andrew, Anderson. Well, Yanni, before I forget, over on your right-hand side, the very first one, you have removed, you said key discrepancies, but you have kept. Okay, because until you said it, I wasn't sure what you were trying to say there. But, you know, I think it would be, you know, appropriate at some point, and it'd be great if, on that, some of those last matters. So we, through our adaptive management process, we've continued to develop a lot of things. I mean, like everything from the administrative report used to be like a half a page. Now it's 4 or 5 pages to the board. It's our master calendar, same thing. It used to be just part of a page, and now it's expanded. And this is all, you know, through the collective ownership of staff. The work plan is growing. Emily's added a whole bunch of nice things in the last few years, you know, other calendars for the board. So I think on that part, you know, in terms of having, you know, we review the job descriptions annually, try to make sure like that, and provide those opportunities based on as much opportunistic of where there are new opportunities, or if there is some turnover, you know, how do you make that into an opportunity for somebody on the existing staff? And so some of that occurred last year, for example. But, you know, if there's I would be interested from your perspective in the private sector, taking a look, or maybe if Emily could share something, if she's comfortable with, like, this is what we're doing. And then, you know, are there new things out? Is there something else that would be suggested? You know, absolutely would be supportive of bringing that in. And I think, you know, yeah, if Emily wants to talk to you offline or now, it doesn't matter to me. But you know, like, you know, because she's brought certain tools to our internal processes that have been helpful, like the Trello board and things like that for managing board, you know, process, board material, board packets, things like that. So, but there'll always be new things, and how do we leverage those? So,
okay. Everything you just mentioned is modern and effective, and it's not common to see, right? And on the public side, or even on the nonprofit side of things as well, right? It's at the end of the day, right? There's effective ways to lead people, and it doesn't matter where you align, right? Like there's proper and improper ways of doing so. I can just tell by some of the things that you mentioned that either, you know, Emily implemented or other staff members have implemented over the years, that, you know, they are effective and they work. And I'm sure you've seen the value of them, right? Of just staying organized and being able to, you know, be aligned and stay on the same page from an operational perspective. But yeah, I'm happy to, you know, grab an hour with Emily and just kind of go through, hey, like, you know, what is our recruiting process? What is our onboarding process? You know, how much does the board have their hand in that onboarding process to ensure that, you know, there is buy-in, right, from every single person that we do promote or we do hire into their particular role. It sounds like we have job descriptions, but making sure that, you know, they're clean and concise enough to remain actionable, and they're not, you know, too clouded with, you know, perfect world scenarios that we're not able to constantly come back to them. But yeah, I'm happy to just kind of run my eyes through a lot of that stuff with Emily on the side, just to kind of see where things stand and see if anything presents itself. Because it's what I'm hearing is a lot of this is, you know, staff is its own thing, right? That's led by you, and it sounds like, you know, a couple others as well. And, you know, the board has ownership and leadership over all of the other things, but some of this stuff, we want to make sure they're there isn't a massive barrier between staff and board, right? And it doesn't feel, I think it's important that there is separation, obviously, but also that it doesn't have a negative impact one way or the other, right? Is that they are bought into the bigger picture and they have visibility of the bigger picture, et cetera, especially through, you know, the board's perspective as well. But yeah, that all sounds great. And these are all good. These are all great things that it sounds like we can do kind of outside of the board on our own time. And you have the autonomy and flexibility to be able to refine some of this, expand on some of this, et cetera. And then anything that needs to come to the board, obviously we'll do so before it gets to the implementation stage. But a lot of this is leadership. I do have a quick question and then we can move on from this. On the HR side of things, like do we,
Thank
that's you. Okay. That was my question. Is that all?
No.
No, it's not. But like, you know, to go back to some of those objective things, right? Like, you know, staff complaints, or if there's an issue, like how do we enroll someone into payroll? Like who handles all of that for us? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so there's a good onboarding plan that staff have put together, you know, and it's developed over the years, right? It went from me just showing up and here's a set of keys to now, like, here's over the course of the first month, things that you're going to be doing, and people have different, this is what you'll do for the different things you will do the very first day, and you will check these boxes over the course of getting all those things implemented. The reason that I was kind of, because it was the one last thing I wanted to touch on was that it is one capacity that we're currently lacking. We have an outside consultant, but it's different than having more internal support. So we've been looking to try to bring in a business manager. And so we've posted for that, but we've had no qualified candidates actually apply. I know I haven't told the whole board yet, but so that's something that we're going to have to revisit in terms of recruitment. Is it the posting? Is it the requirements? What is it? And at the same time, there's some other possibilities. Mississippi WMO, that they have a shared position with the city of St. Anthony. Is that something that maybe we would, do I reach out to somebody like the city administrator over at Wyoming or something and saying, are you interested? What are you guys doing for HR? Things like that. But so anyway, it's still, it's a limiting factor, I'll say, in for the district at present.
Okay.
But
yeah, I mean, it's there is a place for outsourced HR resources, right, to handle a lot of those black and white kind of objective things that need to occur. When it comes to like onboarding internally, yeah, that should be, leadership or whoever's facilitating that process internally. Okay, there's no better way to do that. But yeah, I think that's something to discuss. Like if we're going to hire a business manager and we're able to maybe make some subtle dial changes to our recruiting process to find those best in class candidates. So, we are speaking to the right people that are highly qualified to take on a role like that. Is that role combined, right? Where they are managing all of the HR stuff internally, or is it in their best interest, the organization's best interest to continue to outsource that, to allow the business manager to really focus on, more of the leadership side of things and the organizational piece of it, not get bogged down with paperwork and, enrollment in benefits or payroll, like little things like that someone who's either outsourced, right, or even if it's somebody internally who's probably cheaper from a resource perspective, that can still facilitate clear, concise systems and processes that align with a lot of those.
I think that's what Mike is talking about. Is person, it would be someone that would work half time with us and half time with the.
it's just an option, but
So you can split it up. Okay, I understand. Okay.
same thing with, we just have to work through it, right? As a growing organization, you have more and more HR pieces to ensure that they're being, taken care of for, from the staff perspective and support. But also just recognizing that our HR consultant presently, hasn't necessarily indicated to me when, if he's going to retire, but she's, I've never asked her age, but I presume that, she's probably not far, but she's also doing a lot of traveling. I know her husband is retired, and so I'm just, again, trying to anticipate on behalf of the organization.
Yeah.
So what does that look like into the future? So, is it a shared position? Is it a continued contract position? Is it some combination of business manager and consultant? It might be the most likely, but things that we need to work through as an organization.
Your study.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. I think that's a perfect thing to throw up on the board here. Okay.
But it's certainly within the strategic planning element, it's an important piece within this next 3 to 5 year framework.
Yep. And I think a lot of, some of this stuff, right, seems pretty immediate. But to your point, knowing what that looks like is important. It sounds like we're looking for a business manager sooner rather than later, ideally,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Sector, I'll look into that. Implement space culture, that's already kind of done. Okay, awesome. That's a great start. And I think, Mike, whether it's, you, Emily, and myself, or myself and Emily, like, I'm sure there's things that we can start to unpack here, right? And then bring back to the board in kind of a polished, finished plan, right? As is intended, just to kind of go through some of this and see where things align. Okay. Great. That wasn't so bad. All right, let's talk about the building. I know we've only got 15 minutes here. We're obviously not going to finish this off right now. And honestly, that might be a good thing since not every board member is currently present. And again, I'm just going to set the stage a little bit. So I have heard a couple different things. Number one is we're bursting at the seams. We just need more space. We don't need the biggest, best building ever. We just need to be able to have a little bit more capacity, right? To be able to continue to move as quickly as I think everyone needs us to move from a staffing perspective. That's number one. Number two, we want to be the biggest or the best in class national watershed, and we need a building that meets us there, right? That has the opportunity to incorporate an educational piece to it, to, not only vast in its size and the land associated with that particular property, but also gives us the ability to leverage some of these things that are in education and outreach and do so through this center, if you will. So something a bit more, a bit bigger of a project, if you will. And then maybe something in between, right? We don't necessarily want to go that far, but we don't really just want to like move into a new office building that has a little bit more space either. We want something that's between those two bookends, if you will. So I will leave it at that. I think having alignment is really, really important on where we're going. Is there a phase one into a phase two? Do we move just for the sake of capacity and getting our staff the space that they need to operate at the level we expect? And then we move into our forever home, if you will? Or are we going from now to our forever home? Or, is our forever home just kind of a dream that probably won't happen, and we want something that's kind of in between, but that'll give us a couple decades here. Thoughts?
Well, I put my thoughts down in that little summary that I did. And I didn't number the pages, unfortunately, but it's one of the addendum pages to the strategic plan outline that I did. And this is a real thing. And the board hasn't talked about it in depth so that everybody fully understands it. It's been talked about, but not really in a deep conversation. But we ran into a real problem with, when we were looking to do this some years ago. And the public outcry was enormous. Once they understood the process and we had a big public meeting on it, I think everybody calmed down and everybody gets it. But we have an opportunity to work with a local builder who will help us select the site. We could do our own architectural drawing with help, of course. So we get to design our own space, basically. They will build it, and we will be the only people in it, the only entity in that space. And that, we'll probably have to sign a 20-year lease, which is fine. But this is a real wonderful thing that's been presented to us. There's no public funds that will be used for this. And we will be able to have all of the elements that we've been talking about so that we can do the public meeting spaces. We can do the adequate workspaces for our staff, have a decent room for the board to meet and meet with the public. And so I just think that we need to pursue that. To me, we've got the solution. We just need to commit to the next steps. We won't be using, like I said, we don't have to bond for it. We don't have to use any public funds. So it's just as if we moved into a different building without any of the headaches that have to go into the preliminary portion.
Well, we've actually spent quite a bit of time on this over the years, and the problem is we just haven't been able to push it through. And I mean, for example, ER was assigned this last year or a year and a half ago, and they haven't, and they haven't really done squat for us. So that's probably our own fault. I think maybe you're not too anxious to have to live with a new building before you retire, but so there's all kinds of reasons for that. But I think what we need to do is like any other engineering decision, make or buy decision, let the data make the decision for us. And because it's nothing's free, even if somebody else builds it for us, we still have to pay for it. The public has to pay for it. And if we're paying $37,000 a month or a year for rent now, and it now becomes $150,000 a year, people aren't going to be happy with that. So I just use that as an example. But I think what we need to do is think through the key decisions we have to make. And one of the biggest obstacles is the idea of having an educational facility as part of this. And over all these years, no one has been able to explain to me what that is, what it would do, and how we would explain it to the school board and the county and everybody else that has to approve this. So that's one major obstacle. And I think we have a couple of those kinds of situations that we have to work through. And it requires somebody to, maybe you, Yanni, or somebody else, to get us together and pull us through that decision tree. To make up a decision tree. We are here now, and we're going to end up with maybe 3 or 4 different options. And we work through the decision tree from a cost data and cost aspect, and let it move to a decision that everybody's comfortable with and that makes sense to the people that have to pay for it. So that's kind of my summary of the situation. I think the thing that Manager Anderson came up with is a great idea, and that's certainly one of the least cumbersome outs for us, I think, but it's not necessarily the answer. I think we have to come to that conclusion through a adaptive manager process of looking at what we've got and what we need to have and making decisions from there.
One of my other suggestions is that we get a work group together, just like we have in the past. We get a work group together, we hire a commercial real estate firm to look for the opportunities, the open spaces and so forth. And through them, we can get a list of architects that we can work with, or through our other contacts. Capital Region just did their new building, about 4 years ago now? And so looking at that architect and interviewing them and picking one or two so that they can do a drawing for us and we can get moving on. I think we're just stuck in the muck here and we need to get over that and start moving.
Mike's gotta say.
Mike.
Yes, if I hadn't been gone the last couple of weeks, I probably would have had the memo in the board packet. So I've been working with DOR. So we've gone out to several of the metro watershed districts that have done expansions or builds within the last couple of years. So we've collected this data. We've done the interviews, key staff, and so and finalizing the aggregation of that information for board distribution. With that, then I've also directed DOR to, and we have a draft memo with it, but I wanted that other piece at the same time because, yes, the board directed them last July to start working with me on this, and so it was, yeah, just me just trying to carve some time, and I just finally forced the issue and said, let's do it, and we started making arrangements last, I guess, November, but we didn't do any interviews until January. So,
With architects?
no, with the watershed organizations, but we tried to pull in past staff that were involved as well that maybe were no longer there, like Kevin Bogolke at 9 Mile. So, and so we have that, and with it then is a process, a proposal for a process for selecting an architect. Just to develop the concept, right, and work with the board, because I think that, is going to be the next thing that would take the longest is to like, okay, and it'll force the issue about the education, frankly, right? We'll finally have to decide what's it going to look like, size, and all things. So
Not what we want, it's what the public's gonna accept.
right,
So, well, control a lot of these decisions, so we have to put together our best shot and roll with the punches.
right.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I know that Yanni was, talking about best in class. Well, we're the #1 watershed organization in the state of Minnesota currently by many metrics. So, I mean, we're already there. So, and I still feel some level of confidence that, we could maybe reach out to someone we've talked. There's another organization, Access Philanthropy, so with foundations and things that we could approach, and we just haven't done it, right? So, right, but I mean, but we haven't gone through the process of actually asking, and maybe
It's been 10 years developing connections with those organizations to get funding. That's a waste of time as far as I'm concerned.
well, I have a different belief about it. So
Yeah.
besides, we could ask people like Yanni. He's well connected within Cultivate Advisors. There may be some people that say, yeah, you know what? I want to have a mark on this really fantastic organization. Here's a check for, put together your education facility. We'll even give you some naming rights. So, but anyway, yes, it is a thing for us still that we have to work through. So, but it is finally getting some traction.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes left, so
So what's the next meeting?
are we wrapped up and for this time around?
Are we gonna-
And when is the next meeting?
Yeah, I think this is a topic we probably should focus everybody's attention on, so since you especially brought this late Christmas package forward, it'd be great to start to work on that, so. Maybe we
gonna
start
send
with
an
that
email
and
out.
then try to take it forward.
My goal, so Emily and I can get the next meeting scheduled. If that's not something we can do right now, then we'll coordinate via email and get that knocked out.
Yeah,
Okay.
We've got
And
2
you-
members missing, so yeah, let's do it by email.
I'm gonna do a debrief with Emily in regards to some of the HR stuff and even just this meeting to start to expand on some of this as well. In regards to our next meeting, like, it should be, at least half of it should be pretty well defined, right, in having this building conversation. And the email that's going to go out to all the board members is essentially, I mean, there's a couple things that I need to know, right? Like, what data needs to be collected in order for us to make a good database decisions on this? Are we all under the same are we all aligned on the fact that this is something that should be built? We should acquire land and build it, and that we're not just looking to move here. And do we understand what the process is? Because like what I'm hearing is we need to get a bunch of data together, but maybe we have all that data and we need to go find an architect to build something that is a deliverable, that's tangible, that we can see on and talk about and improve upon, and that brings some clarity to the educational element of this, etc. And also the other side of this is, yes, we're building this for us, but we're also building it for the community. Does the community have any say in this process at all? If so, what does that look like? Yeah,
Why don't we do it, right?
yeah. I mean,
We don't have to.
a lot of moving parts here, and again, like this is all happening in this conversation, and then in other conversations that I've had on the staff side of things, it's like, we don't want to be working on boxes, right? Like we just want space to be able to feel like we have our own room and that we can really execute at the level that we need to. And if we're going to maintain that because there's something that will solve all of our problems for a very, very long period of time, if not forever, well, okay, we can continue to make do. But if that's going to be, we need to kick the can down the road another 5 years, and then next thing you know, it's going to be another 10 years. Well, then we probably need a phase one that handles our capacity constraints before we actually feel the value of something so massive, and get there. But I will put this all into an email and send it over to everyone. My ask will be some input just to gauge where everyone aligns on this in regards to the decision-making process. I'm happy to facilitate that decision-making process. I'm also happy to just incorporate some clarity in regards to an actionable plan that starts with time, intentional time allocated for the board to sit down for 2 hours and have this discussion amongst all of you, and ensuring that these 5 or 6 key pieces are handled before that discussion occurs, so you can do it effectively. But we'll see where that lands.
Can you give us a list of similar situations like this, building a building
Yeah.
or someone that you've been involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you can you just clarify that for me real quick, just so I fully
Well, what
understand what you're
experience do
asking
you
for?
have doing this for a building in a government setting?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
that
just,
should cover it.
okay. So you're looking
All
for just like outlining that process, right? Of what's the best way to approach this? Am I understanding that?
But I'm asking if you've had experience doing it.
I have not had experience through a government process, but I have
Okay.
had a ton of experience building entities or building locations for expansion purposes, etc. Everything from securing the land to design to building, etc.
Yeah.
So that's not, that entire building process from, conception all the way through, is not something that
Okay.
I'm afraid of by any means, and I can
All right.
outline that, right?
Thank
just so
you.
we have clarity.
I think, are we wrapped up now?
I think so.
Done? 7:31,
I'll move to
So-
adjourn.
all right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Taves. All right. No discussion, so
Anybody?
Dave. I'm gonna do roll call. Dave?
Mhm.
Mr. Taves, yes.
Aye.
Manager Anderson, yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Emily, again, for all the prep and that.
Yeah, thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
I have a pretty open schedule tomorrow. If you want to just grab a quick debrief, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know via email and we'll get it scheduled.